So in this video, I'm going to show you how to utilize the power of ChatGPT with Midjourney. And by combining the strengths of two powerful and foundational AI models, you can accomplish remarkable results. And this training includes using prompt weights and permutation prompts for Midjourney, so make sure you watch towards the end of the video. Now there are some constraints of working with ChatGPT. The most important being that ChatGPT does not have up-to-date information about the world. It goes up to September 2021, and Midjourney was introduced in July of 2022. It doesn't always admit to you if it doesn't understand your input, and ChatGPT can be quite wordy with its responses. Another important constraint is that ChatGPT has a limit of about 3,000 words. So when you start feeding it information beyond that 3,000 word mark, it starts to forget about its earlier instructions. So what constraints have you come across? Put those into the comments below. So what does ChatGPT really know about Midjourney? I asked it that just to check that it really didn't know anything about it, and indeed it did remind me that its last knowledge it knew about was up to September 2021. So that was confirmed. But with AI images, ChatGPT did know about, and it understood that concept. So I was pleased with that. So I started to instruct ChatGPT what to do. Imagine if you were employing somebody for a new position in a company. It's like sitting them down and giving them a series of instructions, and it's the same thing with ChatGPT. So I put in, I'm going to create AI images, but I'll be feeding you the information first on the AI generator Midjourney, and indeed it's feeding it first the basic idea of Midjourney and how it works. So I talked about prompts using text descriptions. I did include the idea of image references as well, but on retrospect I didn't really need to do that, because trying to expect ChatGPT to come up with its own image references was kind of silly. I couldn't expect it to make that decision or craft its own URLs, so shouldn't have really have put that instruction in. But I did tell it that Midjourney worked in a random way, so given the same prompt or text input, it would come out with different results each time. So that was an important concept. I went to the Midjourney official manual to start feeding it text about what prompts were, and to give it an idea that a prompt can be really simple, just using a single word or phrase, and then went on to explain about more advanced prompts. And some of the important aspects of that is telling ChatGPT that parameters go at the end, and what parameters are in terms of changing aspect ratios, upscaling and so forth. So just to give it the general idea of the order of things in a prompt. Then I decided to talk about how to construct a prompt that includes a subject, whether it's a person, a character, a location, the main subject, to give it a sense of the medium. Is this a painting? Is this what kind of styling of artwork it is, to give it a sense of the environment in the description. Is it indoors or outdoors? The kind of lighting, the kind of color set involved, the kind of mood that the artwork should be showing. I felt that was important, and even something on composition, to give portrait, headshot, close up and bird's eye view, etc. Now, I knew I couldn't expect ChatGPT to obey all of these rules at once. I think that was unrealistic, but I wanted to give it a sense of the kind of details I'd like included in a prompt. One other thing I wanted to tell ChatGPT about was to avoid crowd scenes with lots of people in them, because I know that Midjourney struggles with that. The faces become very indistinct and warped, so it's better just to work with 1 or 2, maximum 3 characters. Then I decided to feed it a list of styles, of art styles, and asked it to try and include a random medium and style in the prompt. So that's the list that I gave it. Also, the concept that the words and the phrases that you use towards the beginning of the prompt are going to be considered by Midjourney more importantly, and those that go towards the end of the text description, they're going to be considered less by Midjourney. So that's something I wanted to mention. Of course, this is all of my imagination, that ChatGPT, can make these artistic decisions about what's most important. But I wanted to see how far it could go with understanding this kind of idea. I also mentioned about using things like errors or century or decade in the text description, because that could influence a visual style, which it does in Midjourney. So if you put in something like 1950s, then you get certain art forms and styles from that era. If it's a photograph from that era, then it may be more likely to be shown in an earlier color format or black and white photograph. So error is important. A reminder that precise words and phrases will help create an image with exactly the right look and feel, and using emotions with characters as well. So that was another rule I thought about. And I did need to remind ChatGPT about that idea of emotions with characters later on, but once I reinforced the idea, ChatGPT seemed to stick with this and remember. Here's some earlier examples that I asked ChatGPT to create for prompts for Midjourney, and at this point I also asked it, I included the instruction to use the AI parameter, which I'll talk about more in a bit. But I was pretty pleased with how it was remembering a chunk of the instructions I was giving it. I list these examples because it certainly was giving emotion to the characters in these prompt descriptions. So ChatGPT gave me a summary back of the rules. I wanted to check exactly how much understanding, how much it really understood of what I was feeding it. So it did seem to summarize that pretty well. And here's some of the resulting artwork. So a cheerful hobbit gardener with a wide smile tending to a vibrant vegetable patch filled with carrots, tomatoes and pumpkins and so forth. So the kind of prompts I was getting at this stage and throughout this experiment, I would say is more suited to Midjourney version 5, that is expecting more longer descriptive sentences for the prompts. With aspect ratios, I told it about how this was a parameter with AR, and as soon as I started to feed it this information, it tried to summarize back to me what it thought I was saying. It kind of jumped the gun a little bit and thought that this is how the parameter should be, with dash AR space square and and landscape and portrait and so on. So I had to correct it a little bit and give it the idea that what an aspect ratio was for square, landscape and then portrait by giving it some examples. So it seemed to get that correction I gave it. Then I gave ChatGPT a whole series of sample prompts. So I gave it 39 different prompts. Some of these prompts included the aspect ratio parameter. Some included styles, mentions of artists, certainly different genres throughout the examples I used. So I was hoping ChatGPT would have a good look at these and would source these as templates for prompts that it would be generating in the future. Then I decided to ask ChatGPT to consider shots. So I asked it, do you know the concept of shots used in cinematography, most often used with character scenes? I would like you to occasionally use camera shots termed in a prompt. Here's some example shot descriptions. So it said back to me, yes, I'm familiar with the concept of camera shots, which was great. And I wanted to test it to see if it could include prompts that had camera shots built in. And indeed, it did get the idea for that. So here's resulting artwork that includes camera shots as well as aspect ratios. Then ChatGPT seemed to drift a little bit, and I did find ChatGPT doing this on occasion. It would kind of drift away from the instructions that I would give it. So at one point ChatGPT seemed to be adding verbs at the beginning of each prompt, and it also started to forget about aspect ratio, perhaps because I was reaching the 3,000 word limit, and it was starting to get a little bit unfocused about those earlier instructions I was giving it. So I had to kind of recorrect it and gently nudge it in the right direction. And I wanted to cross-check what it still was remembering about my instructions. So I wanted to check on that list of mediums and styles that I gave it earlier, and it didn't seem to remember what I had said. So I think this was down to the 3,000 word limit in retrospect. But there was something else I wanted to do, where if I gave it a particular list of something to remember in order to execute later on, I felt that I should be labeling those lists to make everything more explicit for it. I sort of tagged or named a list and checked its understanding of the list that I gave it. What's the first one in the list of these styles? What's the last one in the list? How many are there? I did the same with the types of details that I mentioned to it earlier in the chat, things like subject, medium, environment, and so on. And I called those that list prompt aspects, and for some reason it then started to add in brackets the prompt aspect in the prompt description. So I think it was just trying to be helpful, by labeling the fact that it put the prompt aspect in the description and highlighting that back to me. But it meant that I would have to edit that out, ready to feed to Midjourney. More examples of ChatGPT prompts for Midjourney generated. Then I started to teach it about prompt weights. I went back to the Midjourney manual to get the official lowdown on what prompt weights were, including the examples, and then it immediately started to place the double colons in between words, so it didn't quite get the understanding that where to place these prompt weights properly. I tried to correct it. I said it should be noted that prompt weights should only be applied between the prompt aspects in the Midjourney prompts. So that list of 7 things I gave it earlier. So I tried to give it the idea of where the prompt weight should go. The other thing you can do is also feed it examples of prompts with prompt weights. Sometimes I use Prompt Hero, a really good resource for examples of a variety of prompts to use with Midjourney. So you could sort of gain examples from there to feed into ChatGPT. And it did get better. And now, of course, again, I'm expecting ChatGPT to make artistic decisions about which elements in the description should have more weighting than others. And of course, it can't really make these artistic decisions. It just does this randomly, but it can come out with some interesting results for the artwork. So it's well worth experimenting, I think, with prompt weighting and ChatGPT. So here's some examples. Space exploration mission to a distant exoplanet. So then I had a go with permutation prompts, which is relatively recent. I think that came in, was it March or April of 2023 into Midjourney version 5. And so I fed it the rules about permutation prompts using those curly brackets, fed it some examples, and this was one of the first results it gave me, which is really pleasing. And as a bonus, it correctly included the aspect ratio as well. Again, I wanted to challenge ChatGPT to tell me what rules it had remembered. I always started to keep worrying about that 3,000 word limit. This is where I refined prompt weights and gave it an instruction that they shouldn't be used in breaking up descriptions of lighting or styles in prompt description, which is what I began to see ChatGPT doing. So the conclusion is that the training of something like Midjourney for ChatGPT is not straightforward, and you can't assume that all of the rules that you feed ChatGPT will be used at once in every prompt, but it will certainly take on board some of them. Sometimes you'll need to remind ChatGPT about rules later down in the chat, but then ChatGPT will then go overboard in showing you that it's obeying that reminded rule, and that will take precedence over others. So be aware of that. Sometimes ChatGPT introduces minor quirks into the prompt generations. It drifts from its instructions. Sometimes it can drift so much and it builds cumulative errors as time goes on. ChatGPT can be quite wordy with the prompts, with the instructions that I gave it. So I think that Midjourney version 5 is perhaps a better fit than the current 5.1, 5.2, and ChatGPT is certainly better pairing with version 5. I'm Paul Bussey from Digital Art Live, and we have live webinar workshops each week in our community where we learn cost-effective digital art tools to tell visual stories. Even if you're just telling a story with one rendered image, connect with us at digitalartlive.studio, and you can use the link in the description below to join our free forum. If you found this video of value, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.